I'm Liz Faublas, and this is Currents. There is much turmoil in the Middle East. To report tonight, the leader of Iran has been physically attacked while claiming his country is nuclear ready. Our president is preparing an urgent trip to Israel, and in the country where the Muslim revolution began, a leader has been assassinated. We begin with Iran's Mahmoud Ahmadinejad in Cairo. A mob scene outside a mosque in the capital earlier today as Ahmadinejad was leaving. Then, out of the crowd, a man later identified as a Syrian attempted to attack the Iranian with his shoe. Now, you see the assault coming from the left side of the screen. A bodyguard is struck and said, then other men threw their shoes. That act, throwing shoes, is seen as a grave insult in the Arab world. Shoes are considered unclean. Ahmadinejad's Iran is Syrian President Bashar al-Assad's closest ally. 4 men, all identified as Syrians, were quickly arrested after the shoe throwing, and Ahmadinejad was hustled into a waiting car. He's in Cairo meeting with the hardline Islamist president and Muslim Brotherhood disciple Mohammed Morsi. Representing the two most populous nations in the Middle East, the pair are trying to patch up relations, strained since Egypt signed a peace deal with Israel more than 30 years ago. And now, in an interview with the Egyptian newspaper Al Aram, Ahmadinejad claims Iran is nuclear ready but won't use the weapons against Israel, saying the arms are for defense only to protect Iran from attack by Israel. Meantime, the Israeli ambassador to the U.S. is saying tonight that President Obama is about to undertake a, quote, urgent peace mission to Israel, his first trip there as president. The ambassador says it's important to begin as fast as possible. The president is expected to arrive in Israel next month. Also tonight, the patriarch of the Coptic Orthodox Church in Egypt is condemning Egypt's Morsi and his drive to impose Sharia law, the most radical of Muslim rule. The patriarch saying Egypt has changed. It is a new Egypt now. The Islamist revolution that is now spreading, often violently through Egypt and across the Middle East, started 2 years ago in Tunisia when Islamists took to the streets and overthrew the government. Well, now tonight, Tunisia is in chaos. A leading opponent of the Islamists dead, assassinated at his home. These scenes from there now show the body of Chakri Belaid being put into an ambulance, but it was too late. He was dead, the assassin unidentified. Well, as that news swept Tunisia, riots broke out across the country. Tanks are now on the streets of the capital, Tunis. Police are firing tear gas and rubber bullets at crowds to control the violence. Islamist party offices have been torched in several cities. Before he was gunned down, Belaid had just organized a coalition to oppose the Islamists now in power. They took over the country 2 years ago. At the time, the revolution that ushered them into power in Tunisia and elsewhere was called the Arab Spring by many, including official Washington. Now, with the radical Islamists in power, often backed by al-Qaeda and other terrorists, a leading Catholic cardinal calls this time the Islamist winter. Meantime, the war against the al-Qaeda assault on the African nation of Mali has taken a turn for the worse tonight. French troops in the country to liberate it are under heavy rocket fire outside the city of Gao. The French forces had chased al-Qaeda from the city about 2 weeks ago. Now, the counterattack. Vice President Biden is in Paris praising France.
Your decisive action is not only in the interest of France, but quite frankly, the United States and everyone.
And the French forces on the ground in Mali report they've killed hundreds of Islamist fighters. Now, turning our attention home. Today, federal officials are releasing the first installment of emergency aid to help those of us hurt by Hurricane Sandy. Almost $5.5 billion, equally divided among the city, New York State, and New Jersey. The long wait for the feds to help contrasts with the quick work of the Catholic Church, with so many in need, so many more pitched in, including one fellow from Florida, now a hero to Brooklyn and to Father Claudio, the pastor of Visitation Church in Red Hook.
And you have a long trip to serve your brother, your sisters here in Red Hook. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We can give an applause for this.
I was asked last week from a foundation in Sarasota called Sarasota Cares that if I could deliver a bunch of Sandy relief items that were donated in Sarasota. And when I was asked if I would do it, I didn't hesitate and jumped on board and got it all loaded, and drove up to Brooklyn.
We are in Red Hook, and this is the parish of visitation. This is a place that was struck by Sandy. Here where I am now, we have the water in this level. In all the street was full of water.
They told me that we were going to have a little surprise to be here with my camera, and when I came here and walked through the doors, here it was. We had all these supplies, stove, refrigerators, computers, bedspreads. It's amazing. It's amazing because we needed this, the neighborhood needed this, the community needed this.
It was a wonderful blessing to see how people still want to give, how people still believe that giving brings unity to a community that needs, especially Red Hook that was hit hard, and our parish was hit so hard. So to see this truck here it was very joyful. It was a wonderful feeling.
Terry, who's actually a truck driver, volunteered his truck and volunteered his time to travel 1,200 miles to Brooklyn, New York, to provide, food and clothing that can be used for any of the Hurricane Sandy victims.
I'm not a real religious man. I know a little bit. I'm very ignorant about a lot of it, but that was very, very warming for the father. That was really the first time that, me personally got attention from a father, and it was very moving.
I was almost crying because I said, this is the visit of my brother. And also the visit from the Lord. I believe in the Lord, in the providence that move many people to take care of other people.
Right after Hurricane Sandy, the bishop, immediately opened up shelters in about 18 of our churches throughout Brooklyn and in Queens, specifically in Rockaway and Red Hook. So we had disaster relief shelters. A lot of our shelters served between 5,000 and 10,000 people a day.
Visitation, they don't care what time it is, or whether it's cold, whether it's hot. They will find it one way or another to help whoever knocks on those doors. They're amazing.
We had almost 2,000 people here a day for 15 days straight. So yeah, we did. We really, really worked really hard, and the diocese gave us their full support.
All the people that join in this challenge of charity, friendship.
Sandy came to show us unity, to show us how God works. Today, watching this truck come from Florida, watching how the giving still continues, this is what is the fruit of the Lord. The Lord says, pave the way for I am coming soon.
And Terry Roberts, the heroic driver that Father Claudio calls his brother, paid all the transportation costs from Sarasota to Red Hook out of his own pocket. The giving continues. Welcome back. Tonight, one of America's leading bishops is calling the Obama administration's new mandate on abortion drugs worse than the old one. Philadelphia's Archbishop Charles Chaput says the mandate is both, quote, coercive and gravely flawed. Usually called the HHS mandate, it is a demand by the government that abortion-causing drugs and other contraceptives be provided regardless of religious beliefs. Last week, the feds put out a new proposal, keeping the order in place but trying to quiet criticism from the Catholic Church and others. Archbishop Chaput's brother bishops at the U.S. conference are preparing an official response to the White House ultimatum. And the Boy Scouts have put off a decision on admitting homosexual scouts and troop leaders into the ranks. Meeting at national headquarters outside Dallas, the Scouts say they need more time to decide. The current policy barring homosexuals is more than 100 years old. The vote now is set for May. And a Catholic school in Montreal has decided to fight. A court has ordered the school to stop teaching a Catholic course on religion and morality. Instead, the Jesuit-run school, Loyola High School, is supposed to teach that homosexuality is normal. Loyola is taking an appeal to Canada's Supreme Court. In Tokyo, meantime, several high schools are teaching students subjects that come from a different land.
The students learn traditional Korean dance, as well as the Korean martial art Taekwondo. Classes are taught in Korean as well. And in each classroom hangs the images of two men, North Korea's founder Kim Il-sung and its former leader Kim Jong-il. But this is not Pyongyang, it's Tokyo. And this is one of 10 private high schools in Japan with long-standing ties to North Korea. The school's principal, Gil Shin, says yes, North Korea has given us financial support over the years, sending money and textbooks. There are also class trips to the reclusive country, though highly choreographed. But most of these students were born in Japan. It was their ancestors who were brought to this country, some against their will, when Korea was a Japanese colony. People think we're being brainwashed. Not at all. We just want to study Korean culture and language, this student tells us. No, I'm not being trained to be a spy. This is just a place where I can show my pride as a Korean living in Japan. But many here in Japan are weary of North Korea, as Kim Jong-un vows to press ahead with a nuclear program and launches rockets that skirt Japanese territory. The students don't know what to believe. My parents say they were just launching a satellite like any country would do, and North Korea does have a right to defend itself. Also on the minds of many Japanese is North Korea's admitted kidnapping of Japanese citizens in the 1970s and 80s, crimes Japan says must be resolved. It's partly why Japan's new Prime Minister, Shinzo Abe, says these schools will not get any funding from the Japanese government. Mr. Shin tells us the abductions were terrible, and we do teach the students about them. I feel bad, he says. My students are caught in the middle of all of this. I just want to study hard and be able to give something back to my community. A simple wish amidst a complex political puzzle, as the world waits to see what will happen next in the world's most reclusive country. Alex Zolbert, CNN, Tokyo.
Up next, the latest in the great immigration debate as Currents continues. Tonight, the great debate on overhauling our nation's immigration laws has moved into a new phase with hearings in the U.S. House. And Immigration Committee Chairman Congressman Trey Gowdy is listing the many issues and the questions behind them.
Are we serious about ending the insidious practice of human trafficking? Are we serious about punishing those who prey on folks with false promises and fraudulent documents? Are we serious about border security and employment verification? Are we serious about making this the last time we have this conversation? Or are we simply playing political games with people's lives?
The hearings were disrupted briefly when several protesters shouted, "Undocumented is unafraid." Well, they were hustled from the hearing room. While the House holds hearings, a bipartisan group of senators are working on plans to increase border security and provide a pathway to citizenship. Well, that key point, pathway to citizenship, is at the heart of the church's push to get Congress to reform our immigration laws. And as we hear now in this Catholic News Report, the church has been working on it for years.
U.S. Catholic leaders have been urging lawmakers to pass comprehensive immigration reform for more than a decade. Republican members of Congress have blocked those efforts for years. That political stalemate may be changing.
For the first time in many years, Republicans and Democrats seem ready to tackle this problem together.
Is it possible? The answer is yes, it is. We can do it, so long as we have the political will to do it.
Republicans appear to have softened their stance on the immigration issue since last November's presidential election, in which the Democratic incumbent president received more than 70% of the Latino vote.
A bipartisan group of senators announced their principles for comprehensive immigration reform, which are very much in line with the principles I've proposed and campaigned on for the last few years. So at this moment, it looks like there's a genuine desire to get this done soon, and that's very encouraging.
These principles include creating an earned pathway to citizenship for undocumented immigrants, strengthening security at the borders, and making it easier for foreigners to immigrate to the country. Final passage of these principles is not expected to be easy.
The church has always been a supporter of immigration, about welcoming the stranger and really keeping families together.
There are also 12 million people living in this country currently who do want to work, who want to participate, who have no intentions to harm anyone, and they need to find some earned pathway to come out of the shadows.
It's such a win-win for the immigrant, win for our country. It's a win for everybody if we could get immigration reform.
In Washington, this is Chaz Muth for Catholic News Service.
Another national debate centers on the control of guns in America. Some want to ban firearms, others want to improve the screening of those who have them. Now comes news from California. The state has identified about 20,000 people, convicted felons, and the mentally ill who should not be armed, and they've known about them for years. Only one problem: the state hasn't gotten around to confiscating the guns, leaving about 40,000 weapons on the streets that shouldn't be there. The state's politicians are blaming budget cuts for not enforcing the law. Up next, the Pope's wine, as Currents continues. In our broadcast yesterday, we reported on the New Mexico photographer being prosecuted by the state for refusing on religious grounds to shoot a lesbian commitment ceremony. Now in Oregon, a baker is facing the power of the state for the same reasons. He declined to make a wedding cake for a lesbian couple because of religious beliefs. Now the state is threatening a possible $50,000 fine if they decide the baker discriminated. And a major change tonight at the post office. No more Saturday delivery of first-class letters. The post office will save about $2 billion a year. They'll continue to deliver packages, and post offices would remain open. The letters will stop in August. Now, for a moment of musical beauty, the music of Mozart and more. The only thing unusual about the performance was the stage.
We're in the heart of Forest Hills at Our Lady of Mercy Church, and I've just accompanied a recital of two aspiring opera singers. A night of opera, musical theater, and gospel tunes.
My repertoire included some Mozart pieces and some newer French pieces.
There's a phrase in Italian that's called bel canto, which means beautiful singing, and there certainly was that tonight.
It was a great performance. It brought me to tears more than once. It was great to see two such young, talented people performing such a wide variety of not only styles but emotions in the pieces that they evoked.
Even though the subject matter isn't about the church, it felt so freeing in this space. It felt like the space wanted it to be sung.
Music is great music. So, gift from God, perfect place.
This is this kind of space that opera is meant to be performed in. Opera developed from church music, and even though some of the subject matter is secular, it all takes its roots from the Bible and from this space. This is where it all comes from.
Singing is very important. It's vital to the worship service, it's vital to church, and it's vital to the world.
There is so much in opera that reflects what goes on in people's hearts and minds, and that's what we come to church for.
There's a sort of intimacy in opera, which sort of mimics an ideal relationship with, a prayerful man and his creator, so to speak.
Music is a feeling,
And that's what church is about, feelings.
The beauty of music is one of the forms of beauty that is the most intellectual and the most human, and in that sense it belongs in the church as much as any other art form, if not more.
To be honest with you, I'm not necessarily a big opera fan, but tonight may have transitioned me into that environment.
My mother is very involved in the arts as well, and very involved in the church. So in the church, you either sing or you're a missionary. Well, I'm actually both.
And Pope Benedict's love of music is well known, and now we learn from the Vatican about some other things the Holy Father enjoys.
It's not very common for Benedict XVI to talk about his personal taste, but he did just that when he met with the tribunal of the Roman Rota. He greeted the judges one by one, and when he spoke with a judge from Spain's La Rioja region, he made a comment about the wine produced in that area.
Ich komme aus Spanien, aus La Rioja. Rioja, bitte für Sie. Bitte für Sie. Sehr gut. Sehr gut. Dankeschön.
It's because of these audiences that one can learn a bit more about the personal taste of the Pope. As a theologian, it's widely known that he's an intellectual. He loves music and books, and he's not a big fan of sports, but in his free time, he enjoys playing the piano. As a German, he likes beer and typical Bavarian cuisine. He's also said that he likes Fanta's orange-flavored soft drink. And now we know that from time to time, he also enjoys his meal with a glass of wine from Spain's La Rioja region.
And finally tonight, we remain in Rome, inside St. Peter's Square, where a 25th anniversary led to an audience with the Pope, and then a joyous celebration for all.
The sound of horns and fancy footwork filled St. Peter's Square. 82 musicians and dancers, all perfectly synchronized and in colorful costumes. They're the latest cultural ambassadors to the Vatican. Bringing the music and dances from their native Mexico to St. Peter's Square, the festive sights and sounds celebrate their 25th anniversary. For the dancers and musicians, it is greatly satisfying to be at St. Peter's Square and to hear the applause and feel the warmth of the people. It's very important for them.
You get goosebumps and you feel a warm embrace from people, which with this weather, which is very cold for us, feels great.
The group spent nearly 6 months preparing for the trip, which included other parts of Europe, but they were especially excited to see the Pope. Following the audience with Benedict XVI, they organized an impromptu concert at St. Peter's Square. Their colorful attire and unique sounds ensured a constant flow of curious onlookers.
You're here doing your own thing, but the audience rubs off their excitement. It makes you feel even more proud of your country and of who you are.
It makes me proud. It's a dream come true. I can represent my country with what I love most, my music, my heritage, my culture. With the Pope's blessing, the group will head back to Mexico, where their celebration will continue. With 25 years under their belt, they hope for more chances to dance and sing their way back to the heart of the Vatican.
And thank you for joining us tonight. We leave you with more from the night at the opera. For all of us here at Currents, I'm Liz Faublas. Have a good night.